One. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. We have a ton to talk about this week. You know, we've been doing this for a long time, and I don't think it would be crazy to say that this is the most news and the most happenings we've had in a week ever related to the arena.
Yeah, I can't even it was hard to structure this to be in a normal length Lightforge episode. So we're breaking this down into two parts. All right, first is the part of what's actually happening in the arena. Patch 10.4 is here. It actually came in on Monday, or like overnight between Sunday and Monday after the last Lightforge that we did. So all the changes are in. Then people played it. There was a lot of reactions. I wrote a Reddit post. Blizzard responded, and within 2 days of that, Blizzard hotfixed a whole bunch of stuff. And then we have a whole new meta in the arena now than we did for those 3 days. And so that's half of it, and the other half is we have like this whole new expansion that has been announced, and it's not just a new expansion, it also has like new mechanics and all this new stuff that I guess like at least I was not really personally prepared for. I thought we were going to get like a more boring expansion to kick off the set, but it's got stuff.
Definitely. All right, so let's talk about the thing that impacts arena more, right? Patch 10.4, and you did the 30-second version of it, but I think we need to expand on it just a little bit more.
Okay,
right?
so 10.4, what did it do?
Let's start at the beginning. 10.4 dropped on Monday, right? After last Lightforge, we're like, it'll probably drop pretty soon. Well, it dropped the next day. And 10.4, what it did is, number one, it made sure all of your picks are of relatively equal value.
Yes.
Right? So, like we talked about in the previous podcast,
all your options within each pick.
Yeah. So you are going to see the Primordial Drake Fireball Ley Line Manipulator pick. People even saw that, and then they posted it. They're like, haha, look, the patch is working. But you also see stuff like Eviscerate, like with the backstabs, with like the, I don't know, of something of equal value. Assassinate? I don't know. I'm not sure of the buckets exactly. But so drafts matter now, right? Your choices matter within a single pick. They try to make sure that it's a tougher choice for each pick.
Almost every pick requires like thinking now. Like if you, so it works in both ways, right? Like if you really like thinking about your draft choices, this is really great because now you can think about it for 30 cards instead of 6. On the other hand, if you really don't like thinking about your draft choices because you're like really, overwhelmed and anxious about it, and you're like, am I going to get this wrong? This is also really great for you because they're all roughly even value. You don't even like necessarily need a tier list. You'll still be fine, right? Like if
it cuts both ways, right? Because there is definitely going to be a wrong one.
Sure, I mean there is. Yeah, but at the same time, it means like imagine someone who has no idea what they're doing. You sometimes just see decks in the arena back in the day where you're like, yeah, well they screwed up, like just immediately, right? They're just having so many crap cards, and that's just not going to happen anymore. So from the like very bottom of people who are totally not concerned with like learning the arena and the draft, or for the super noobs, this patch is great. And for the people who really want to dig in and make the decks the way they want to make it, this is also a great patch. Like drafting wise, this patch is just kind of a giant win for the arena.
Right. But when this patch dropped on Monday and people were playing, people realized that it was problematic because, you predicted last week on the podcast, it's like, oh, they're going to raise the average sort of goodness of a deck, right? Mm-hmm. And boy, did they ever. So many legendaries, so many crazy good cards. When I got beat down, like just by the
to give you an idea of what happened. Lich King went from 1.5% of all decks to a height of 12.5% of all decks in 10.4, according to HS replay data. That's 1.5% to more than 10 times the original rate that you see Lich King. Now, that doesn't mean you saw all legendaries that much more, but because of the way the drafting is weighed, you always see the better cards more frequently, like the better sets more frequently than worse sets progressively. So it was scaled in a way that Lich King was ridiculous. Like you would see a few Lich Kings every single run, guaranteed.
Right. So I will say this. I drafted a deck after 10.4, like pretty soon after 10.4, and I had a Kazakis with, and the only double I had was a double of of a Frostbolt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had Kazakis, and I had a Fireball, a Firelands Portal, a 20 Flamecaller, and also like a Blizzard, right? I was like,
Yep.
wow, this is a really, really good deck. And then I brought it into the arena. I was like, wow, my deck sucks. I was like, oh, I didn't get Lich King. Oh, wait, I didn't have. And I tweeted about the craziest thing like I saw, which was a hunter with like the death rattle synergies galore, right? With Katharinas and also the like Tundra Rhinos, and then like play Spellstone to charge him out after that and everything. And yeah, Arena was.
And once you tweeted
mess.
that, I think multiple people was like, yeah, I faced the same guy, also known as, like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the hunters out there now.
Exactly. So this happened after 10.4 came out. And yes, some people were just like, wow, I kind of like the craziness. But I think overwhelmingly people in the arena community were just like, this is not the arena. Whatever this is, it is just like not the arena. And not what the arena should be as well.
And honestly, I was reading like casual message where, okay, so one, the only things you can ever see are these somewhat like vocal and hardcore people, even if they're not the necessarily the core arena hardcore people. But like people posting on Blizzard main forums, so there was like just widespread, I think, acknowledgement that this is like crazy and maybe fun for a while, or just horrible to begin with, but that like no one wants this to be the status quo, or like very few people want it to be the status quo. And to Blizzard's credit, and it's not just Lich King. We bring up Lich King because it's like the most blatant example out there. It's a neutral card. Spike Ridge Steed's rate of being present in a deck tripled. And the thing with Lich King, as you'll see, is that when Blizzard hotfix things, Lich King is down now to 4% on Arena HS, which means sorry, not Arena HS, on HS Replay, and it's probably going to drop a bit more as all the old decks get phased out. So maybe it'll settle at like 3.5%, which is still more than double its old offering rate, or around double its old offering rate, but is a massive drop from 12.5, right? On the other hand, you look at something like Spike Ridge Steed, which went up from 5.5% to 15% during this initial period of 10.4, even after the hotfix, it's still at 12.5%. It hasn't dropped down by all that much. And that's because whenever people are given the choice between, like, you know, cards and Spike Ridge Steed, they always take Spike Ridge Steed, apparently, in overwhelming numbers. You don't see this phenomenon with any other card in the entire game. So, because of the new 10.4 system, it gets a little harder for Blizzard to control how frequently decks are seen in cards are seen in decks, and it actually exasperates any differences that there may originally like be. And I'm gonna phrase this again and say, like, Spike Ridge Steed itself is not like the biggest problem. It's not our highest rated Paladin card. It's not the highest win percentage Paladin card. Both of those are Vine Cleaver.
Right.
Like, that's the stats say Vine Cleaver is best for even average players. Like, we think it's like really significantly better than Spike Ridge Steed when it comes to good players using that card.
Much more often by Vine Cleaver than
exactly. Yeah. But people don't think that, because just looking at what people are drafting, they're drafting Steeds over Vine Cleaver like all the time. So there's no controlling for people's like misconceptions about things. But you get these issues that are a little difficult to fix. But anyway, going back to the whole idea of 10.4, it's that there were a lot of good cards, and then Blizzard listened to the community. The community was pretty much on the same page. I wrote a post with, you know, more than 3,000 net upvotes on Reddit that just kind of highlighted 5 points that I was concerned about, or that I had. It's called 5 Thoughts on patch 10.4. And it started off saying the draft part is great, like the offering of in sets of roughly equal value is really making the drafting so much better.
Right.
But then the gameplay kind of was pretty horrible.
Let's establish a timeline here. So the patch dropped on Monday. Mm-hmm. You wrote this post on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, Wednesday noonish.
Right, and a lot of people agreed with you. And Mike Dene responded pretty quickly after you posted it. Yeah. And so, you know, Adam to kind of summarize his post as draft is good, but we are suffering in gameplay, right? I think that's a fair...
Yeah, in skill-wise in gameplay, at least. I was trying to, like, not make too many comments about how not fun the gameplay is, because that's, like, my personal perspective. But at least skill-wise, it definitely went significantly down during that period.
Right. And Mike Dene came on pretty quickly
Hmm.
and said, thanks for the constructive feedback. We will be working on iterating on this system. There have been a lot of positive feedback for number
Hmm.
one. And by number one, he
The
means
draft,
the
the
draft is
drafting
better.
and set things. Hmm.
Right. As you said, from others also. So maybe we will keep it and adjust
Hmm.
the other numbers. And a lot of people responded to Mike as like, hey, this is awesome.
Yep.
Thanks for responding so quickly. Right.
In my original
And
post, I was like, please do something before Witchwood comes out, please.
right. And what ended up happening?
I think,
Friday,
yeah, in 2 days, like 48 hours.
Friday, in 48 hours, Blizzard basically came out with a post on their official forums and essentially stated they are hot fixing the arena, right? And they are hot fixing in two ways. Number one, the rate that you will encounter or the rate that you will draft legendaries has been decreased. And number two, the overall quality of cards has also been
Hmm.
decreased. So within 48 hours, Wizard took this overwhelming sort of sentiment and acted upon it, which is
Insanely fast.
unheard of.
Yeah. Like for Hearthstone, it's unheard of. Even for other games, it's like insanely fast. And this is even if like they wanted to do this like before my play, like let's say on like day one they wanted to do this, that's still really fast, like of a speed in adjusting it, and it means that they're really taking this to heart, and that there's some kind of mechanism in place internally in Blizzard that lets people make decisions very quickly now and execute on them. Because
Yeah.
before they may like want to do things, but not be able to do things. A large organization, you have to get the people in power to okay things, maybe. And now the process is at least ironed out, and then the people are very incentivized and very on top of things in terms of moving when they have an idea that they're looking to get.
So here's essentially the timeline for this week and everything that's happened for this week. 10.4 came out, and even before 10.4 came out, we were just like, we love the idea
Hmm.
behind 10.4 in like making the draft matter more, right? And we said even before it came out, they're not going to get it right the first time. But our hope is that they change it. They recognize that they need to change it, number one, and they change it soon. People were in an uproar Monday and Tuesday. You made the post on Wednesday. Mike Dene came in and said, we recognize that
Hmm.
this is an issue and we're working on it. And on Friday, they changed it. Now, obviously, there are things I can nitpick about, like, they didn't give us the numbers. They didn't exactly say what they changed on Friday. We still don't have numbers, but you have to applaud Blizzard when they do something right.
Yeah.
And this is fantastic. Like,
Oh
this
yeah.
is exactly what we needed. So thank you, Blizzard, because, I think we are appropriately critical whenever we see something that we think is being done wrong. But we have to commend them when they do something right as well. And this week has been a great example of when it just
Hmm.
works out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did like that last week. If you listen to last week's episode before this, I was very positive about the upcoming changes. I just had a lot of like expectations. I thought it was difficult for Blizzard to mess up the implementation, and then they kind of did, but then they fixed it really, 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 really quickly.
Right.
So that's what you could ask for, right? Like they tried something. They thought, you know what? Maybe adding the top legendaries, being seen 10 times more frequently in the arena, is like a fun and great thing everyone will love. And then it turns out that at least a very large percentage of people were not so happy about it, and they're like, okay, well we'll just tweak it back, right? Their core idea was good, that stuff all worked about drafting and set, so they just had to tweak a couple numbers, and they were able to get it through their system and make that decision to do that very quickly. And that is like, if you're going to make arena in like a constant state of like beta testing for what the best arena would be, like that's the kind of speed you need, and Blizzard delivered on that speed in changes for 10.4 patch at least.
Right. And like, because the hotfix was only on Friday, I played a little bit. ADWCTA hasn't, I think you played less, right,
I played
than I
1-1.
have. Right. So we're not exactly sure how the arena is after the hotfix,
Oh,
like exactly how
I
it
could
is.
give you a whole bunch of numbers. Here's just like
Right, right.
roughly, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're wondering like, oh, what's the arena like right now? Your top legendaries are approximately doubled or more than a little double compared to before patch 10.4. So first of all, consider 10.4 like fixed from the perspective of everything's totally crazy and you have no idea what's going on. That's done with. Now you have some kind of an idea of what's going on, and the total craziness is gone. And numbers-wise, the top legendaries are offered about a little more than twice as much as they used to be before. Like, I don't mean in Wild, I mean before in KNC. The KNC bonus is still gone. And and that's just the top legendaries. So by like the average legendaries, it's actually getting offered like about the same. If not a little fewer than before. Now, when it comes to top other cards in the arena, like all the Spike Ridge Steeds and things like that, for most top cards, compared to 10.4, it's something like plus 50% more offered for like the very top rung, the super premiums of each class. That's where it's at right now. Whereas before it was like double or tripled. So it's kind of like dialed halfway back. And then there's a lot more like middling kind of cards that you're seeing now. Like a lot more, cards I would say in like the 125 to the like 90 range of
Right.
Lightforge tier list.
So basically my point is, obviously we have the numbers, right? Like I can't tell you how the feel of the arena is exactly. Like, but I think if we just focus on the just sort of the speed that Blizzard has like sort of tweaked things, right? This is like super encouraging because we don't know if this version of the arena, if this version of the drafting odds and whatever micro adjusts that'll always keep happening. I don't know if this is the final version or if it's like a good version even, but it is something that is better than before, right? They saw feedback, they took feedback, they implemented it. So that already is super duper encouraging. And I'm hoping we just see more of this, right? Like they implement a change that is foundationally good, right? Also, this is just like if they had done sort of this process with the synergies, like
I don't
although I
think
guess
synergy picks are fixable that either. The reason this is fixable is
they had
because
to have put more work initially.
I mean the reason this is fixable
Yeah.
is because the core change that takes a lot of work and is not very easily changed was fine. And it was the other stuff that you literally just had to change a number server side and update it and hotfix it. That was the issue. The synergy picks wasn't just a server side chain. Let's change a number issue. It was kind of pretty fundamentally. You have to keep building it. There's no way they can move that fast. Like there's no way anyone can move that fast. That's like actually not possible. And that's still a risk in the future, right? If they're going to keep testing these kinds of things on us, like one of these changes they're going to test is going to be like, hopefully not as bad as the synergy picks one. I don't know where like that one kind of came from in the way they're going about it, but like something's going to be not the home run success that drafting in sets is, and some of them are not going to be easy to fix. And at that point, it'll be like, so are you going to pull this back, or are you going to just kind of put us in a crappy place for an extended period of time? But at least they're making the small changes very quickly right now, and that's all that's needed for 10.4. So again, when it comes to, like, Merps talking a lot about process, I want to talk about where the arena actually sits right now, even though this is going to be like, I don't know, a 3-4 week meta before we end up with the next expansion. And what we sit with right now, and this is only going to get more in that direction once the rotation happens and we have fewer cards to deal with, is that the top cards are seen about 50% to 100% more often across the board, but like about 50% more often across the board than they used to be seen. And legendaries are seen about twice as often as they used to be seen. So the power levels overall of decks has gone up. Not too much, but enough that it's still noticeable. And that's fine, overall. It's just something to kind of note. And that's what I'm comparing, of course, to pre 10.4. That like 4 or 5 day meta of like extreme swings is thankfully over. Okay, so that's the 10.4 meta, and if you're wondering how to like play in that meta, right now Hunter sucks statistically. HS Replay is giving very low Hunter win percentages. I have not had any success with Hunter or seen that many successful Hunters in the arena in this period. I have had a lot of success playing more reactively, With Shaman is, I think, in a very good place right now between the micro adjusts and the fact that it's a pretty reactive class, and the fact that one of their top cards was always Jade Claws. And when you have Jade Claws and more Jade Claws, you have the option every time you get a good card to pick Jade Claws. Like, imagine if you took all of your Crushing Hands, Jade Claws, and I don't know, Volcanoes, not a better card than Volcano, and Stormforge Axes, and you put them all together, and all of those, instead of getting those 3 cards, you would change them all to Jade Claws, because now you have that choice. Like, it's pretty good, because Jade is good with other Jade. Now you do the same with Jade Lightning, and you kind of have this like nice little thing getting built. I think Shaman's in a very good place now. Paladin obviously in a very good place now because of the super high powered cards that Paladin's always had. And I think Paladin is topping the win rates right now.
Yeah, I believe I saw that as well. And Warriors, they're really not that bad right now, or at least they weren't bad. We still might see some shifts and some movements.
This system favors Warrior because they always give the Warrior options, right? The problem before is you would be forced to take weapons when you don't want to take weapons anymore because weapons are seen a lot because weapons are good and they're micro adjusted up. Well, now you always get 3 choices of the same amount of goodness. So you're never going to over weapon unless you decide to over weapon. You can always switch one of your weapons to like a really, really good 3-drop or like whatever, right? And that really opens up the drafting.
Arcanite Reaper, you pick the Frothing Berserker.
Right, exactly. And that makes you able to actually build a Warrior draft rather than being given whatever Blizzard's algorithm decides a Warrior draft should have in terms of weapons. And that makes a big difference. That's one of the key reasons why the new drafting system is so much better than the old one. Like, you get to decide where your deck goes in a much more direct way than it used to. What about 1 point? So 2 points. So I had five thoughts on the Arena in the Reddit post. 1 was about drafting and how it was good, so nothing to be done there. 2 were about gameplay and how 1 is too many legendaries. 1 is too many there's just the top level class cards and how they're really lowering the skill cap, or not the skill cap, just like the amount of skill it takes to win a game in Arena. Those have been like mostly addressed. Like, they've still upped it, but it's to a pretty reasonable level right now. Like, now it seems like they have done something, not like they've done something crazy. And again, because drafting has gone up so much in skill, right? Like at the top end, drafting has gone up so much in skill that even though I do think right now, gameplay-wise, Arena still has less skill than before 10.4, it's kind of making up for it in the right proportion now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like, overall, it's just good. Like, I like the, whenever we do come up with issues in the draft, these are all just sort of like good problems to have, right? And the only regret I have is looking at 3 really, really good picks and then not being able to pick all of them. And I'll get over it. But this is, I don't think I have anything really negative to say about the draft itself
system, right? Yeah, like it's just way better than what we've seen. I'm sure there's ways to make it better, but like for now, we're just really happy that this drafting system, 1, that Blizzard thought of it, and 2, that they put it out, and that 3, that it's the drafting part at least is relatively, error-free coming right out of the gates. Like, there was a lot of, like, this is what I mean, right? Like, a lot of people, when they first announced it, was like, oh, Blizzard will never get the tier list right. And we never expressed any real doubts about that, like, having a negative impact. Like, they didn't get the whole tier list right, obviously, right? But they got the, more than 85% right. And the other ones are still way better than before. Because if they get, like, 1 card wrong, you still have a choice of 2 cards. Whereas you usually don't really have a choice in the Arena. So, like, and they're only getting better at it. It's an algorithm. They're taking win rates. They're taking pick rates. They're going to find out what is best for the average player. And they're going to lump them all vaguely together. And there's always going to be differences within each pick. Or else you're going to get the same sets offered to you, against the same cards every time. And that's not the case, except at the very top. Because, it tops out, right? Like, let's say Striker Steed is the best card. Well, then it can only go down from there. And let's say there's only like 5 other reasonable cards that can compare to it. Well, then those are the only cards it's ever going to get offered against. But if you're in a card more in the middle, like let's say a Fireplume Phoenix, you're going to get a pretty wide range of somewhat similar cards. And some of them are going to be like a legit like 5% better than Fireplume Phoenix or 5% worse. And that is going to make a difference in a totally like deckless, this is the first pick of the draft or whatever like situation. But also, it's always in a situation now where a pretty reasonable deck leaning one way or the other way will definitely make you pick one of these picks over the other ones if you're drafting smartly.
Yeah.
And it's more skillful, it's more fun.
Even though this isn't synergy picks, we do see sort of like the ability to go with synergies, right? It's tangentially, they have implemented synergy picks, which is something I love about it.
Because synergies are rated kind of like in the middle of where I think like they are. There hasn't been that many issues with synergies. I think they're generally a little overrated compared to where they put them. But you're also now able to basically pick synergy picks without getting in the way of your true silvers and stuff, right? Because with synergy picks, even if they're a little overrated, they're not like the best cards. And they're not going to get in the way of your best cards now. So you're, instead of giving up potentially like a consecration for your silver hand recruit synergy, you're now giving up a fire plume. And that's like a much more acceptable amount of loss to take. And you take a couple of those, and then your synergies get together, and they, make up for that loss is the idea, right? So if I want to make a X kind of deck, it's still not guaranteed, but my risk is much, much, much lower than before.
Right. And so this is also where I'll say that obviously I would appreciate more info from Blizzard because of something like this, right? Right now, people have been noticing that the buckets, and I'll call them buckets, right? Like whenever you have a pick, a lot of the times they're seeing the exact same things over and over again, right? Like very similar picks, and every single pick, they'll pick either from the exact same 3 cards or from like 3 out of 4 cards, right? And obviously that's good information to know, because if you know what is offered from each tier and you know the probability of getting like any certain tier, right? Then you can sort of calculate, it's like, is it worth going for Jades, for example, right? Because if all the Jades are in one tier, then no, because you want the Jade cards to be split up, right? Like, so for like, let's say the S tier, there's like a Jade card. And then for A tier, there's also another Jade card. And for like the B tier, there's like the third Jade card because it's just like not as good, right? But if you figure that out and you figure out that like, oh man, it's worth it to pick Jade, because no matter if I get S, A, or B, I'm able to like pick Jade. That's really good. But if you figure out that like all the Jades are on like the A tier, then you're like, okay, no, it's just not worth it because I'll never get enough. So that's information that can be very important, right? If you know that information, you are going to be ahead in drafting than someone who doesn't know that information. And as of right now, the only way to figure that out is to calculate it yourself and also compile it through very tedious ways. But hopefully we'll get that.
Yeah, so this brings me to the other 2 points. Out of my 5 thoughts, the other 2 points that were not addressed by this hotfix yet is one is the rehash, right? Like we need some kind of information about what the rules of the game are. Right now we're doing what Merps is saying, right? We're like, trying to figure it out, but we don't really have the information. And for Blizzard's part, the more algorithm-y that they make their information, the more impossible it is to like actually present it in any meaningful form to people. So they keep saying like, yeah, we're trying to look into it and doing stuff, but like, yeah, we understand it's a hard process, but it's got to be done at some point, because that's like a missing element in the arena right now for good players. And it's unfortunate, because it's part of the game. We're still playing a game which we don't really know what the rules are for it, and they are rules that literally change every time Blizzard patches things. So it would up the skill of Arena up a lot at the top end if they just tell us what the rules are. And we understand it's harder than just like doing it, because a giant data dump, let's say into an API or something, isn't really the most helpful thing either. But that is something that they're hopefully working on. We'll see. And the other point that I just found this really interesting, because I had this as an assumption going into 10.4 once I heard what 10.4 was, and then I played 10.4 and I was like, this didn't really happen that way implementation wise, and this was not one of the things that was hotfixed when they hotfixed it. So I think this may be like, this is kind of we'll say like a design decision, right, of how you want the arena to look. Back in the day, offering rates were based on rarity or whatever, so you kind of get good decks or bad decks. Now, they've decided all picks must be interesting, so all picks are the same, which means they now have essentially like a Blizzard tier list of sorts that they're not telling us, but that exists, which means they can make it so that overall, after 30 picks, all decks are within some kind of band, right? Like you make it so that a deck won't be too good or too bad overall. And maybe that kind of band is happening, but if it is, it's like a very wide band right now. Because you still see decks that have like, I've drafted decks that are really bad tier list value wise compared to other decks, and there's been drafts that are, everyone's seen the deck list and stuff online and on Reddit and whatever that are just insane, right? Like, oh, I guess I do have 6 Jade Claws, and then I'm probably going to win the game with my 4 other Jade Lightnings. And so I thought it was just this obvious thing that you would just standardize all the decks. And Blizzard didn't do that and still hasn't done it, which brings the point of maybe they don't want to standardize all the decks. Maybe they do want that to be completely random. I don't think they do.
And I don't think a lot of people want that as well.
I don't know. I really don't know if a lot of people want that or not. Because even if you're like a casual player, you may want it to be fair. Because I think a lot of casual players going into this, like you may think, I think because we're judgmental about these things, so the stereotype of a casual player in an experienced player, in a veteran's mind, is someone who doesn't care at all and just wants crazy crap to happen. And so the higher the dice roll, the better, the more RNG, the better. But in reality, a lot of casual players, they're still playing the game as like a kind of a strategy game. They kind of want to know what's going on. And because they don't know a lot about what's in the arena, they're always fearful that they're the ones getting screwed. Like, that fear, the fear of losing out, is bigger than the, like, excitement you get from potentially winning. Usually, that's just human nature. And because an arena is such a big unknown, I think there's just a lot of fear. They're like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to face 8 Lich Kings, and my deck is going to have no good cards.
But I think people, when they play a mode like Arena, they like the chance of them being able to get 8 Lich Kings. And that's the thing, right? It's like when you go to a casino and people, it's like the casino saying, oh, we're going to be more favorable to you guys and limit the standard deviation of your gambling, right? Like, people don't want that. People, I think to some degree, like whenever you go into the arena, I'm not saying it's gambling, but
like, I think, by the way, for your casino example, that's exactly what casinos do. They go in and they limit the standard deviation of your risk taking, and that's how they get people to gamble more, and that's how they get people more comfortable with gambling.
You know what I mean, right? Like, yes, they do that, but I'm saying like they make the amount that you can gamble a lot less than they do right now. I'm saying like right now what the casinos are right, and then the casinos are basically saying, no, we're going to limit the amount that you can bet significantly more, and we are going to limit sort of the risk and reward a lot more. Right? Like from now. I understand what you mean.
What I mean is that the casinos have already done that. No, they started out in the Wild West, and then they've already done this.
I agree. No. Just take a casino right now allows you to bet $100, let's say, right? And then in my example, the casino says, no, you're only allowed to bet $5. Like, just I understand theoretically what you mean.
No, that's not in theory. That's historical. That's stuff that's actually happened.
I'm not talking about history here.
So I'm just saying. I'm missing your point then.
Oh my god. All right, I'm gonna move on then.
Okay, so, because what I'm saying is, in reality, because this has already happened, this is how economic factors and human behavior works. The casinos are there to make money, so they want people to get as much money in as possible. And to get people to get as much money in as possible, they limit the risk of people and they limit the rewards on purpose at the cost of the casino, actually, for individual instances, so that they can keep people hooked for longer.
I'm not saying I'm saying what they do right now. They are. Okay, never mind. Moving on. Going to your example of normalizing all of the decks to a single score, right? A single value.
Well, not necessarily a single value, but like a lower band, right? Like a small band. You're never going to go with a single value.
I don't think people would like that, because even though it is skill, people still want variables, right? And I think that is a variable that people not only enjoy, but they expect when they play something like the arena.
I would think they'd rather have the variable be based on like, I don't know, oh, I made a good Jade deck or something like that rather than
No,
um
I think people also enjoy the fact, like, people enjoy stomping with good decks, and they also enjoy doing well with bad decks at the same time. I think you take away a lot of what society deems as acceptable RNG here, right? And this is something we've talked about before on the podcast. It's like, what is acceptable variance
mhm.
slash RNG, and what is unacceptable? And I think most of the community would say deck variance in the overall value or score, right?
Mhm. That's
That
like
is
acceptable
a
RNG.
very acceptable one for the community. And there's not going to be a right answer to this. It's just how people feel, right? It is just preference. It is just it is just the amount of variance and risk that people are willing to accept and be happy with. But I think this is one in which people are pretty happy with, and I think that
Okay.
people we're appreciate the fact that you brought it up in the thread, but I think this is the one that like people universally agree with you in numbers 1 through 4, and number 5 was one people were like, no, I don't exactly agree with it because of this and that. And I think I'm with them as well. I think we should see a variety of deck scores or deck values, because I just think it makes the arena a more enjoyable experience overall.
Mm, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that much less crazy if you standardize deck tier scores. Is kind of my point. Because if the drafting system is working at all, then it's not just a tier list thing. The tier list is one, like you said, right? It's one element of the RNG, and it may be an acceptable element of the RNG, but it's something that is, can be there, it cannot be there. It doesn't actually affect what's happening in the arena besides making it more or less skill. Like, that's one of the easiest levers that you can pull to just be like, same game, but more skill based, same game, but less skill based. Like, it's one of the easiest levers to pull in either direction. And, maybe Blizzard's not pulling in any direction right now, but Blizzard has but Blizzard can easily limit it in some ways. They may already be limiting it in some ways. They may already have a floor and a cap on how good your deck is, and we wouldn't even know. Or they may not have anything like that at all. But it's something that they can do. It would be very easy to do, and it's a tool that they have now in their toolbox. And at least as of now, from what they've told us, they haven't used that tool yet. And you're saying you don't want them to use that tool, but I don't think the question is should they use the tool or not, because the default, there's nothing special about the default, right? The default is still a whole bunch of what percent chance do you get offered which card, which set in which tier list number set you get offered. That's still something Blizzard made up. So there's no actual natural state default or anything particularly special about the natural state default. Instead, it's a random thing Blizzard picked that I'm pretty sure Blizzard doesn't have any deep science behind it or anything. And it's something that they can change at any time. Literally to be more skillful, less skillful, right? More variance, less variance. And so it's always a decision that Blizzard is making, even if they do nothing because, they think this is fine the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. Basically, because you're arguing for them sort of standardizing the average value of a deck,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, right. And I'm just saying, I think that whatever they're doing that is not that, because I can't really define what right now is, right?
Well, right now they're basically doing that too. What I'm saying is they're always doing that.
They're
It's just
always
where
doing
the
that to
lever
some
is
degree.
at.
Right. You're saying you want to tighten it up
Yep.
a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm saying no to that. Essentially, it's hard for us to is essentially saying instead of 4.5,
yeah, right, because we don't know
7,
what number
right?
that they're at, right?
Exactly. So it's just a matter of degrees and a matter of feel and the relativity, right? So I think whatever they are currently doing, it is acceptable, right? It is acceptable and it is fun and people like that. And then it's just if you move it, I think you're going to take a lot of people out of the arena. That is also one of my fears as well, because if people don't get the potential to high roll, especially people more casual players,
But
right?
people
Like
will
they,
get the chance to high roll in game and in draft, right? Like by synergies, by like
that's not how they
serve.
feel though, because at the end of the day, they know that everyone. It's like, oh man, I gotta.
No, I disagree
No,
with that because why would they play constructed otherwise?
no. It's not about why they're playing constructed. It's like this is why they're playing arena.
Okay, but I'm saying like if they care so much about this kind of high rolling a deck kind of thing, then why would anyone play constructed? All the decks are like, assuming you have the dust, they're like pretty similar in constructed.
Right, we're talking about arena. I don't
Okay.
understand.
Well, what I'm
This
saying
is
is,
why
no,
they're
but we're trying to find human nature, right? You're trying to figure out one, how to sell a game, two, what people actually want.
no. This is once again, this is why people enter the arena. I don't understand the point you're making here.
So you're saying arena is inherently to people more casual and more variance than constructed. So in constructed, people actually like constructed because they feel they're in control of their deck. But in arena,
Right.
the same exact pro thing would be a negative.
Right. It's like people don't like being scared unless they sign up to get scared,
Okay.
right? To go to a horror movie. It's like the same. It's like
Well, that's a fundamental issue I have then. I don't agree that arena should be less skilled. I don't agree that arena should be that if there's a lever that's like more skilled, less skilled, doesn't really impact the meta of the arena, that you should pull the lever towards less skilled, and then that's where arena should be. Like, I don't agree with that. And we already have the example of constructed, the normal mode, the mode that almost everybody plays, where this particular lever is pulled very much, like at least like past a certain amount of ranks, like to the minimum, to a near like standstill. And that's by the natural way the game is designed. But still, you can do the same for the arena, and by choosing not to, you're explicitly saying arena is less skill, more variance. And I don't agree with that. Because that's not like a natural thing. That's a decision that Blizzard makes. And what you're saying is Blizzard should make that decision, and I'm okay with that decision, and I think that's more fun. And what I'm saying is it should be more like constructed skill-wise if you can do it without like screwing everything up. And now you have a tool that can very easily just, you're actually making a stance. Like there's no natural
they
stance,
have
right?
a tool for this. And I would say, okay, so here's the thing. I am not saying you should not pull this lever at all. And by lever, like once again, we were defining it as Blizzard has, because they're in control of the game, they have ways to make it tilt towards more skill or less skill, right? And for this, obviously, my preference for this, for this aspect of the game leads towards not like less skill, right? Like there's no argument there. My second point is, if we want to make it more skillful, I think we can leave this alone and then like shift it towards other parts.
Okay,
like,
but this is the easy one. I'm saying this is the low-hanging fruit. That's my point.
I think
agree with you. You can move other things and it'll have potentially a bigger impact. But that
right. Like don't make spiteful summon, right? Like like in which they pull out a pyroblast and then you get Yasharaj, or if it pulls out like a shifting scroll and you get a wisp, right? Like just don't make spiteful summon.
Right.
That's a very easy way to make it more skillful. But I just don't think we should pull the lever for this average deck. Like, so I don't want you to think that I don't want to pull that lever. I do. I just don't think that this is a good lever pulling opportunity.
Okay, I mean, I just want to pull all the levers. I think anytime you make a game more skill based, it's going to be better as long as the game is like fundamentally designed in a fun way. Which I hope Hearthstone is. But maybe that's just me. Maybe people don't really want the arena to actually be the great. Like I think of arena as the great equalizer, right? Like people come in without the decks. Like new players or just players who are generally smart and good at like card games, but may not have the collection with Hearthstone. They all kind of flock to the arena instinctively once they realize how behind they are in deck collection and don't want to drop a ton of money into it. Why? Because arena's the great equalizer. You get all the cards, everyone drafts a new deck from like scratch or whatever. And like I think that's part of the very identity of arena, is that it is the great equalizer. It's that when you come into the arena, for the most part, skill is what determines the result. Whereas in constructed, especially in the early going, especially like, and by early going, I mean is for you as a player in Hearthstone. Especially in the early going, like constructed is not really about skill. It's about who has progressed long enough to have better cards and a baseline level of skill. And so, I don't know. That's how I view the arena from a pretty fundamental, why does this thing exist kind of like place. So over a long enough period of time, it is still going to be skill based, right? Even if you keep this lever all the way on the other side, but you get a chance to really limit that here. Okay. Anyway, we can agree to disagree. What's the question from the go before we move on to the expansion?
All right, so I actually don't have one for this week, but I just thought of one.
Okay.
It's not anything that great, but basically we do have the expansion coming out, right? And with the expansion coming out, essentially, my question is, what kind of second or third tier class would you like to see rise into the top 3? You know,
like into the top 3,
right? Because for the last expansion, right, we saw hunters shoot up to number 1 for like a historical number 1 for a while until they dropped it down with the micro adjust. I'm not saying I want to see that exact thing happen again, but we've had a lot of classes for quite a while be kind of at the bottom, right?
Okay, so let's say historically it was in the very beginning. Mage, obviously, Paladin, obviously, Rogue, probably. Obviously, I mean, those were the top 3 for a while. In the very beginning, Shaman was there. Druid was there in the very beginning. And then they kind of fell out.
Druid was always it was never number 1, It
was Trump's number 1 way back when. And Trump was if not the best player.
Okay, this is beta. Huh? This is beta.
Yeah, this is launch. But yeah.
This is beta, dude.
Fine. Okay, fine. So maybe Druid was never number one. But anyway.
Yeah.
Druid had a moment in when Ultimate Infestation came out where they were number 1 before they got micro adjusted down. And they got nerfed, right? Actually, the cards got nerfed. So I'm trying to think of which meta was the most awful, right? Because every class right now, besides Warrior, has kind of had a moment to shine, at least a moment. Now that we've gone
sometimes
through the MSG Warlock meta, the Priest meta in January, the Hunter meta in December, we've been covering our bases here.
I would say that historically, though, so even though Hunter saw the highs that they saw recently, Hunter has been one of the ones that historically has not, if you just average out, right?
Yeah. Of course. If you average out, it's going to be if you average out, the ping classes and Paladin are going to be at the top.
Right. And then with all the other classes on below that.
Yeah.
Priest, Shaman.
But just because something hasn't been at the top doesn't mean I want to see them at top 3. I'd be happy if Priest was never ever top 3, right? I think most top Arena players would feel that way because it's Priest.
I complained about it for a long time, and then when they finally were up there, I'm like, I hate the Arena. I hate the Arena. Some people asked me about this previously. I was like, no, you never want to see Priest at the top.
No, you never want to see Priest at the top because it's just do you have it? Do you not have it? There's no skill in having it or not having it or playing around having it or not having it because you don't know.
And they
have everything.
Suffocate you in the late game, right? Mm-hmm. They never kill you that fast either. It's not like a Hunter in which it's just on to the next game, I guess. No. They take their time.
But yeah, so just because, let's say, Shaman hasn't really had a significant period of time as a top 3 class, it doesn't mean I want to see Shaman get there. It doesn't mean I want to see Priest get there. I don't know, maybe it's been long enough since we were in the era of Mage dominance, but I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, think Mage should always be a top 3 class because it's so fundamental. They literally designed the entire game around Jaina's hero power. If you read how Hearthstone was developed and all the hero powers, that was the first hero power. That's how the game is balanced. So
makes sense.
When you have the balance thing at the top, that means nothing else is too unbalanced. When you have the balance thing at the bottom, that means some of the things in the top are going to be literally unbalanced, a design imbalance when it comes to the arena. And that's why you don't want that. So yeah, it got a little boring when Mage was always the best or the number 2 class, right? Or number 3 if you really try to argue for 2 classes. But that's what a healthy meta is in the arena. Mage is going to be up there. Paladin is going to be in the top half, if not the top 3. All right, you can bring Rogue down. You can bring Druid's probably going to end up in the middle for good players no matter what because of the whole Mage thing. But But you don't want to see classes like Hunter or Priest or Warlock or Shaman or even Warrior be at the top. That's not a good time.
No. Also, the thing that is great about seeing Mage number one is like you can definitely exploit mages unless they make the mage crazy. Like I don't want to. I have no idea what the new expansion is going to be, right?
I mean, like current mage, right? Like mages doing what mages normally do.
Mages are always they've definitely changed, and the game has gotten crazier. So I would say mages are one of the more predictable classes, right? In terms of they can't do as much crazy stuff. The power level of their cards, obviously, they have some pretty powerful cards, but they're a very fair class, and people will laugh about that.
No, they are, and they're very diverse too. Like their archetypes can be aggressive. You know, you have your pyroblast, you have your hero power that can go through taunts, right? You have your reach spells, and they can obviously be very control.
Right. And I think that is, you know, outside of the Karazhan meta, in which they just Firelands portaled you 4 times until you died. I think when mages are at the top, it's like you can play your warriors and your hunters because you can just like kill them, right? And obviously you don't have like an amazing win percentage because they're, you know, they're still very good, but it them being at the top opens up these aggro possibilities, right? Because with mages, it's always like it's always a very well-rounded class. So I think that's good. Like I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, you know, a lot of people might not like this idea, but I wouldn't mind if Mage made its way to like a number 1 or a number 2 again, because that's kind of the way the arena should be.
It's a fundamental kind of like game mode where you just strip all the other crap away. So yeah, the class with the most fundamentally powerful and flexible hero power and like fundamentally flexible types of cards, that is going to be at the top. Like, yeah, I mean, this is going to be like a super unpopular opinion, by the way. I think you're understating how unpopular of an opinion we have on this. Like, it's going to be like 80% of people are like, you guys are crazy. Don't you remember how bad it was when Mage was number 1?
I think if we said this a year ago, people would riot and like unsub.
Definitely.
And
I was saying that a year ago, and nobody was on my side. Every time I brought this up, I feel like I'm like, you know, doing something crazy.
I think now, after people have seen like what happens when Priest is number 1, right, by a good amount, what happens when Hunter is number 1 by a good amount, it's like there's always going to be a class that's number 1. The oppressiveness of that class makes a huge difference.
The unbalancedness of that class.
So, and this is also why, like, if you guys remember when Poundin was like the other classes, whenever they were number 1, were always more oppressive. And it's hard to kind of define this, but they were always more oppressive.
Paladin as number 1 wasn't that bad.
It was really bad. They curved out and then they like Oldemon you. And
it was
they
just Oldemon. You're just salty about Oldemon. It's just that one card.
Muster with like Oldemon or muster into Blessing of Kings, and they just no. That was bad. Shielded mini bots and everything. That was a bad time.
I disagree with that. I thought that was like not a good time, but I thought overall it was a better time than the Priest, better time than the Hunter.
Dude, they had like 2 Oldemons per deck. Remember?
All right. I mean, really bad. Oldemon was pretty bad. But imagine without Oldemon and all the other good Paladin cards came back, I still think it would be like okay.
Right. Anyways, so I don't think I would mind seeing that. I also wouldn't mind seeing Rogue number 1 again. You know, I think Rogue. It's one of those classes that very skill intensive, and Rogue is exploitable as well, right? At least for now. You know, they don't have great ways to board clear. They certainly have their weaknesses. They can use their dagger a lot, but then they get into sort of like burst damage range as well. So historically, we have seen the Mage and the Rogue be number 1. I wouldn't mind seeing them be number 1 again. You know,
I much prefer Mage to Rogue as number 1, because the thing with Rogue is a lot of the times, like the point of a Rogue is that they're the ones in control. So that's not really a good feeling if Rogue is like I think we were never really in an area where the average player can take Rogue and dominate. We were never in that meta. Like Rogue had been for a long time the number 1 class, but that's because it was like top players rating Rogue the number 1 class, because top players were doing really like, you know, interesting and skillful things with Rogue because there was more options given to you as a Rogue player than the other classes, arena wise at least. But if they actually make Rogue into a top class the way, like, some class has to be number one, I think that would get oppressive, like just as bad as some of the other classes. I just think we haven't seen that type of oppression yet because of historical reasons of like what we think of as Rogue being number one is actually Rogue being like balanced with Mage.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to the new expansion, which we haven't got. Like, I can't believe we did this whole on the announcement of the expansion. We had a whole entire podcast. We're like more than 50 minutes in, and we haven't gotten to this expansion. So,
right. Well, there's not too much to say about this expansion, but on Monday, we also got the expansion news. So the expansion is the Witchwood, right? And I don't look. ADWCTA and I don't know about Warcraft lore, so I don't know like what location this is or what happened there.
I'm guessing it's in a forest with witches.
Right. Well, and I'm guessing there's like monsters and beasts in there because we are going to see a lot of beasts in this set. Like,
oh, that's right. It's a forest. There's going to be a lot of beasts.
There's going to be a lot of beasts. And if you see the cards that have been released, there's a lot of beasts.
Oh, so, that's actually really interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Because the one that's rotating out is Old Gods, which didn't have a lot of beasts. The one that's staying is Ungoro, which is like a whole crap ton of beasts.
Yep. Beast.
Ooh.
Beast.
Beasts.
Beast Hunter might actually be a thing because it is not a thing right now.
Yeah.
Beast Hunter is definitely not a thing. And it could be. But with Beast Druid, they're having like Mark of Yasharaj rotate out, right? Mm-hmm. They're having they're losing some beast synergies. So, anyways, with the Witchwood, we got some card reveals, and we're not going to talk about so the big thing that they're releasing for Constructed, and one of the themes is odd and even cards, right? That go with odd and even decks. And the two legendaries are Gen Greymane and Baku the Moon Eater, in which if your deck has only odd cost cards, do this. If your deck has only even cost cards, do that. They both change your hero power. These two legendaries and their supporting cards will not be in the arena, so we won't talk about them.
It's Cthulhu all over again.
It's Cthulhu all over again. And do you have any feelings about like them not including these cards?
Okay, so my feelings are, when Cthulhu was excluded, I was like, okay, whatever. We lost a bunch of curve cards, whatever. But now, like, that was before we had 7.1. That's before we had 10.4, these patches that fundamentally changed Arena. Like, now we have a whole system in place where when these cards are bad, they're just going to be, like, bad cards, and you're just never going to see them in the arena, so what's the point, right? Like, why even exclude them? On the other hand, you are getting rid of some like decent curve cards. There's that Mage card that's a 3-mana 3/3 with the spell damage +1. Like, you don't need any synergies for that to be a good arena card. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm just afraid that they keep taking out. Like, these are the cards that are going to be the curve cards. Like, a decent percentage of them. It's not going to be as bad as Cthulhu, where every Cthulhu card was a curve card, but it's going to be pretty. I feel like there's going to be a good number of curve cards excluded like this. So you're just going to keep like chipping away at the curve when you do these exclusions. Whereas before it was kind of necessary, so you don't just end up with a bunch of Cthulhu cards and no Cthulhu. Now, I really think with this new system, this is really not as necessary. I'm not like the most upset about this, but I want to play with all the new cards, even if I have 0% chance of triggering its synergy. Right? Like, we have other cards that I will never trigger its synergy that stay in the arena.
Right. I think that's fair. Like, so here's the thing. I don't mind it so much that they did this, mostly just because for the same reason that they justified not including the Cthulhu cards, right? And with the Cthulhu cards, that was a lot worse, in my opinion, because every single card was a curve card.
Arena
right?
viable.
And a good card.
Yeah.
Like 3-mana 3/4s, like 4-mana 4/2 Divine Shields, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actual good cards that you would pick. And the reason they gave was just because, look, we don't want players, when they see these cards, to always feel as if, hey, I'm missing out on something, right? And I think that's fine. And these cards especially, some are really, really bad.
Yeah.
Like Glitter Moth, which is a 5-mana 4/4 epic card for Priest with Battle Cry. If your deck has only odd cost cards, double the health of your other minions. So it's a 5-mana 4/4 beast, period. Just like there's no way you ever activate this in the arena. So it is like a terrible, terrible card, right?
Okay, but you know what's in the arena?
Terrible
Light's
card.
Sorrow.
I understand. Look,
just as an example of a card that you probably don't even know what it does.
Right. But
because it's so
that
bad.
doesn't mean we should always add those cards.
Well, then we should take all the cards out. I just mean there's no consistency in it. I don't know.
Right. And look, there are a couple of cards that are actually good for the arena, like Black Cat.
Yeah, that's what I was
It's a
talking about. Yeah.
common 3 mana 3/3. Yep. With spell damage +1. Merc Spark Eel for Shaman. 2 mana 2/3 Beast with Battle Cry. You know, like so basically it's a River Croc.
Yeah,
right?
it's a River Croc. Just give
I'll
them
take a
more
River
River Crocs. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Anyways, so this is one of those things in which they're not including it. I think you can definitely argue that they should include it. I don't care that much, right? It's fine. It's fine. Anyways, we're not going to really talk about the specific cards because they're like, or okay, we're going to address 3 cards, but we're going to address them because they're showing off new features, right?
New mechanics.
New mechanics. So I want to start off with the mechanic I think is going to be very arena relevant, or perhaps more arena relevant than constructor relevant, which is Echo.
Yep.
Okay. So the card that they showed is a neutral card called Phantom Militia. It's a rare card, 3 mana 2/4 taunt. So yeah, it's just like the tentacle, right? 3 mana 2/4 taunt with Echo. And what Echo does is whenever you play it on a turn, you have like a ghostly image of a card that appears in your hand, and that only gives you the option to play it again on that turn. So
wait, if you play the ghostly image card, you get another one.
You get another one. You can keep on doing it as long as as long as you're able to keep on playing it. And we've seen this before, actually. This is Unstable Evolution, right? This is just like we've seen this Echo effect. They just haven't called it Echo until then.
Yep. Or so, like with the Rogue Death Knight.
Yeah. Except that only makes
only makes one copy. Yeah,
that only makes one copy. So it's not a true Echo effect. But so with Phantom Militia, what you can do is on turn 3, if you play this, you get the ghostly image, but you have no more mana, so you pass, and the ghostly card, like goes away, right? On turn 6, you essentially are able to play this 2 times. On turn 9, you can play this 3 times. Now, do you want double 2/4 taunts for 6 mana? No, that's not like a great use of your mana, but you're able to use your mana. And in Arena, a lot of times you just need a little bit more size, right?
Yep.
So this is a great mechanic. It's going to see a lot of use in the Arena. We'll see how they utilize this. But if we see this on neutral cards, like
all neutral Echo cards that are also curve cards are going to be good cards.
Oh yeah,
in the Arena, all of them. Just like flat, like just we don't even need to see what the card is. If it can be used on the curve as like a reasonable curve card, and it has the word Echo on it, it will be an above average Arena card at minimum.
Right. So Phantom Militia, you're definitely going to see it. You're definitely going to draft it. It's not a world beater, but it's going to be a decent card. So that is the first.
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about Echo. I think it continues the theme that Blizzard's been doing for like more than a year now, which is to make all of their low costing curve cards that they release now actually not hurt you in card advantage. So they started making these cards like draw other cards or have chances to draw other cards. Or like if it's played in the late game rather than the early game, it actually turns into a mid-sized card or whatever, right? Like there's a whole bunch of ways that Blizzard's been doing this with a large percentage of the smaller cards that they've been releasing, or like Poison's even kind of a similar effect. If you play it on curve, like all it does is kill another card on curve. That's all the Poison will do. But if you play it later on, then it has the chance to kill a much bigger card. So it's a theme. It's something Blizzard is doing with their curve cards, and it's just something to take note of. It also means that now all the decks are looking more and more the same. You don't have to like pick, right? Like I have curve or I have a lot of card advantage. Now you're like, I'm going to get my curve while preserving card advantage. I'll just have crappier card advantage cards.
Right. I just thought of a pretty interesting card, but we'll see. Okay, so the next mechanic is.
Did you think of the Gibberer 1 mana 1/1 Echo?
Yeah, except every time you play it, you lose 1 health.
Oh, That's evil.
You like it? I
That's
like it.
evil. Absolutely evil.
Yeah, it's so it's 1 mana 1/1 echo. Every time you summon it, lose 1 health.
It would not be
I
a
think
good card. I don't think it'd be a
it
good
would
card.
no, but it's interesting, right? Like so it you always are able to play it essentially, but like
Because it's just like
obviously
Forbidden Tentacles, except like you start losing health, but it's much more flexible.
it's more flexible, and also there are certain benefits to actually summoning it, right? Like you actually summon it, which activates
You mean you actually
some
play
things.
it? You
Yeah,
always
you actually
summon it.
play
You
it.
actually play it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, not because summon is,
Yeah.
but yeah, you actually play it from your
Yeah.
hand.
And Forbidden
which,
Tentacles is like a really good card. So this one would just be like a okay card, maybe.
right, exactly, and this is also why like it would be neutral,
Yep.
right? Like yeah, it has to be worse than. But anyways, I like how we thought about the same thing. It's like the gibber. The next card is once again a neutral card. This one's a common. It's called Pumpkin Peasant. 3 mana, 2/4 with lifesteal. And each turn this is in your hand, swap its attack and health. So on one turn, it's a 2/4. On another turn, it's a 4/2. And you can essentially like wait until a good opportunity to play it. Right. So what this does is it gives one card just more options, right? You have more options for this one card, but you also have to turn plan as well.
Yes.
Like you have to think, it's like, oh man, I don't really want to play it this turn as a 2/4, but do I want to play it next turn as a 4/2? Right. So I think that is a really cool mechanic. Not only do you get more options, it forces you to turn plan a little bit more. It's just a really good mechanic, right? Like not OP, and it expands the game, which is fantastic.
I
It's not
also
just like,
appreciate more 4/2s in the meta when it comes to 3 mana cards. We have a ton of 2/4s and a ton of 3/3s when it comes to bad 3-drops, but not a lot of bad 4/2s. So that's always appreciated.
yeah. So that's cool, and hopefully we'll see more of those as well.
Yeah, they're fun, and they're always going to be like, especially if it's something that basic, it's going to be arena friendly.
Right. And the last mechanic Blizzard's coming out is Rush.
Yay! What a new mechanic. We haven't been dealing with this in the arena at all.
They actually like took this directly from Shadowverse, right?
Rush
is a key word in Shadowverse. I think it's the exact same thing, actually. But
I'm sure it was in something else before Shadowverse.
Probably, yeah, exactly. I mean, these are all like steal from each other, right? Rush is charge, but you can't go face.
Like a charged Devil Sword.
Exactly.
Also, like the card Charge now, which is now give a minion rush 1 mana. And they've changed that a few times. And if you're a pure arena player, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Because it was excluded from the arena like 2 years ago. And then they like didn't ever put it back in the arena, even when it became like okay for the warrior to have it.
Yeah, I like how Charge is now Rush. The card Charge.
Gives Rush.
So this helps solve Blizzard's problem. And Blizzard, okay, at the beginning, they thought like Charge was a fun mechanic, and it is, right? But then because the game got complicated,
they very quickly realized Charge was a problem.
Because it is such a design space issue, right? When they found out whenever they were trying to design stuff, it was always the Charge problem. And because of the nature of Hearthstone and like face hunters just like dominated for the longest time, right? And Blizzard's like, we can't have this ever happen again. So they scaled back on Charge tremendously. And whenever they put a Charge out, it would be like the Paladin Charge.
Yep,
right?
4 mana,
like
3/2.
4 mana, 3/2 lifesteal. Like they like went down on the stats so much. And also just like no neutral charges, right? Also, like they messed up with patches tremendously, but they tried not to put out any chargers. And this is finally them being like, you know what, Rush, like charging minions is okay, right? Like board control is okay. It's basically like a spell, right? It's basically like a spell, but in minion form. And the first card they released, rejoice, all you warrior lovers out there.
Oh my god.
Militia Commander. It's a rare minion. 4 mana, 2/5 with Rush. and it has the battle cry, gain +3 attack this turn.
Such a stupid card.
The first turn this card comes out, it is a 4-mana 5/5 charging creature that obviously cannot hit face. So, okay, sorry, I will use the new keyword. 4-mana 5/5 rush.
It's a rushing creature.
Rush, 4-mana 5/5 rush, and then after the turn is over, it turns back to attack.
This is such a stupidly overpowered card.
So good.
Like this is like flat out overpowered.
Yeah, I know.
Like not like good, not like premium, like super premium. Like this is such a silly card. And I hope this is like the absolute top end of this rush mechanic. And that they haven't decided that rush is okay, let's make all these cards. Because if they do, then that's like a whole crap ton of removals getting added to the arena in a very arena-friendly like format. And then we're going to remember Witchwood, not for anything else they do, but just for like, everybody has rush. Everything gets rushed. Which, you know, wouldn't be the worst meta, but it would very much overshadow all the existing minions and cards. Because
when we talk about a minion meta being better than a spell meta, if the minions all have rush, it is a spell meta anyways. Because charge and spells are fairly close to each other, you know? Like, it's fairly close to each other. Now, typically, they're just worse spells, right? But they are kind of spells still. So whenever we have a militia commander, which even by spell standards is really good.
Compare it to Bomb Squad, which is 5 mana and not 4. You deal 5 damage somewhere, and you leave a body. And the body has 2 attack. So here, you don't always leave a body, but I'd say you have a 50% chance to leave a body. So, like, stats-wise, it probably should be the same as a Bomb Squad. Now, you don't lose 5 health from it, which is huge. That's got to be worth at least, like, probably like 1 mana, or like half a mana at absolute worst. And then, on top of that, it's 1 mana less. And the only drawback is that it can get taunted and you don't get the correct target. That's it. That's insane. And Bomb Squad's already a really good card. Like, this is silly.
Yeah, so it's gonna be good. Militia Commander, pretty freaking good card, man.
I just hope the other rush cards are not as good as this one. Like, I hope this is the best rush card that they are releasing.
I don't know, because now that this can't attack face, I think, who knows? Well, anyways, we know that Warriors are getting at least one really good card.
One insanely powerful card. And it's Warrior, and this is not a weapon, and it has initiative, so it gets even more value than it would in another class.
That's the thing. Like, with Warriors, they just needed good non-weapon cards, and now that, you know, whenever they get a good card, unless it is, like, you know, Arcanite Reaper versus Fire War Axe versus, like, let's say the new weapon that they get in this expansion, right? Unless it's like those 3 together, you're always going to get an option of, hey, I can pick this Arcanite Reaper, or I can pick the Frothing Berserker, right? Or I can pick, like, I don't know what other good cards are out there, or I can just pick this like neutral good card, like Primordial Drake or something, right? So there we go. Like, you always have an option. So if you're low on weapons, you take it. If you're already high on weapons, you didn't have to sacrifice anything. This should be good. It
should be good for the Warrior. And, you know, Warrior with OP cards in the arena, no one ever cares too much about, because it's hard to make the class OP. But we'll see. Like, it got helped a lot by the 10.4 drafting rules. So this is all good stuff. Are you done with Witchwood? Because I want to talk about one more thing after Witchwood for a very short period.
Yeah. I think this is all we can really say about Witchwood for now, and we're not going to see more news about it for like another week. We're not going to see news about it until the 26th, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it for now on Witchwood. They basically laid out sort of the themes that we're going to see, and then we'll just wait to hear about the card releases, which will be in another week.
Wait, it'll be in another week?
They won't start talking about the cards or like releasing the cards for another week, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay, just one more week? When does reveal start?
March 26th.
Oh, okay, wow.
Exactly 1 week.
That's faster than I thought. Cool. And normally it's a 2-week reveal period, and then the game is launching. So if we were to speculate a bit, April 10th release date. It's my pitch for the release date. Anyway, that's Witchwood. One more thing I want to talk about. Well, last thing, really quickly. We have these new cards in the arena. We talked about them in the last Lightforge, but now they're actually in the arena. And I don't think that many people care about it too much because they don't show up. I mean, they show up often enough, right? Like, you're going to be offered a couple of these every run. So it's not like they're not in the arena. Especially like the Shaman one, you actually have to play around it because it's so like game changing. But overall, like, am I the only one that thinks this has had very little impact on the arena, both in terms of like just like meta and in terms of like fun and like just everything?
What do you mean?
Like, I barely notice a difference. Like, if they did not exist, I would not like or dislike the arena anymore.
I will say I am kind of annoyed at Crackling Doom. Like, Crackling Doom is just one of those cards, like any sort of card in which you cannot play around at all is really annoying, right? And Crackling Doom is an ever-present threat to your board, right? And they can Crackling Doom, and then they can even like tempo out for that turn. And yes, you know they can't do anything on the next turn, but sometimes like Crackling Doom is just too much, right?
Oh no, you just get a Eternal Sentinel like I did in my 12-1 run, and then you can do whatever you want the next turn. You can actually overload for like 20 overloads, and then just do whatever the next turn and win the game. It really makes the game a lot easier. I don't know why more people don't do it.
So I think Crackling Doom is like that one is just annoying, right? And there are certain cards that not only are powerful but just feel oppressive and annoying. I think Crackling Doom is one of them. The other cards, you're right, I don't notice them, right? Smoke Bomb is definitely like a good card, but you don't like notice it, right? It's not a card that you feel, and even though it could change like the outcome of the game, it doesn't leave an impact, right? Like Crackling Doom leaves like a very lasting impact on the game. So yeah, I agree. I like it though, right? Like it added something to the game. I haven't had a chance to play with the new warrior weapon yet. I've drafted warrior. I haven't gotten the blazing longsword yet. But
I mean, it's a good card. They're good. No, they're all. I mean, most of them are like premium cards. The rest are like pretty average-ish, but they're all fine card-wise. It's more that I feel like Blizzard tried something here to like spice up the arena, but it didn't add really all that much spice, and probably took them a decent amount of effort to like discuss and create these ideas and run the event and all that. Like, I'm not gonna say it was like a failure, but I'm pretty sure this is not a good place to be spending resources overall when it comes to arena improvement. Like, we haven't had arena specific cards until this, right? This is like the test of what happens when we make arena specific cards. And I think the answer is like, unless you make a lot of them and that they're like game changing like Crackling Doom, arena's not really gonna feel it that much.
Yeah.
So like, definitely appreciated, but I wouldn't be surprised if Blizzard no longer goes down this direction, or if they were to go down this direction, they realize that they really have to give like, you know, like almost like a mini expansion of arena cards to kind of really make arena feel the impact of a particular event.
Yeah. We'll see. Like, I don't know what their feelings about it are, right? They could feel as though, hey, this is a success. Like, people, like, we've managed to add value to the arena, and I don't know how much time they took, but I do agree. You know, it seems like it took them more time than, you know, the net benefits. And obviously, because they don't have all the time in the world, I would like to see them focus on other stuff.
Yeah, and especially this one where they did 3 cards for each class and allow people to pick one.
Right.
Like, if you're gonna design 3 cards, put all 3 cards in. This is arena. It's gonna get diluted like crazy. Like,
I know,
you
right?
need to put a lot of cards to make it done.
Although I will say the other 2 mage cards that they put out, I would have been super annoyed.
Oh yeah.
Dude, like, how can you do you remember the two other cards for Mage.
Some of them are so bad. I don't remember like
Okay,
exactly.
okay, I will go through both of them because I actually remember them because they burned like they left a lasting image in my head. All right, so audiences picked the polymorph because that was like the worst card or like
the worst card, and
right.
this was when Mage was like still pretty up there.
Right. One of the cards was a 1-mana spell, 1 mana, discover a legendary minion.
Oh god,
People were gonna get really tilted by that, right? Okay. The other card was 2 mana, cast a random spell with random targets, draw a card.
Yeah, okay. Blizzard should no longer design arena only cards if that's okay. Well, I'm thankful to the people at BlizzCon for being sane with Mage.
With Mage, I was just like, oh my god, we've really sidestepped something like ooh, that was gonna be dangerous.
Oh wow.
That was going to be real dangerous. And a lot of the other cards were like just fine, right? They were just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the other two Mage cards, I was like, no.
Okay. Well, that's it for our overview of all the craziness that's happened this week. We anticipate less craziness happening, and so maybe next week will be a more focused discussion on one of these particular things. Probably patch 10.4 in more depth. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Once again, the Lightforge is brought to you by our Patreons at patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And until next time, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Good luck in the arena, guys.
All right, that's it for the arena for the Lightforge. We're gonna do arena.